The budget clock, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, the latest shoe to drop by the governor, the budget doomsday clock. We'll get to that a little bit later this half hour. Also, the latest update on the storm damage in West Virginia. Phone number 1-800-765-8255. The best way to reach me is through text. 304-TALK 304. 304-TALK 304. Please welcome, let's get right to it, the Senate Finance Committee Chairman, Senator Mike Hall. Senator, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
I know you're crushed. I appreciate you coming by. I wrote a commentary today about what I think you guys are talking about in terms of cuts. Everybody's been waiting for your cuts. Let's go over my list, and then you can take out my list and you can add and subtract. Because we're trying to get to, if you use the governor's budget, you got to come up with about, if you're not going to increase any taxes, you got to come up with about $500 million in cuts if you're not going to increase any taxes. Here's my list, and tell me if you're thumbs up or thumbs down. Getting rid of the governor's proposed SOS fund, $105 million. In or out?
That one is probably out. The House is going to consider funding it in alternative ways and maybe put a little general revenue in there. That's what I'm hearing from the chairman over there. But it definitely will be nowhere near $100 million.
Okay, so there's savings there. Smoothing out payments. I'm not going to get into big detail about this, but I think everybody's on board with what's called smoothing payments in the teacher retirement system. You have to be actuarially sound, but instead of putting all the money in that's due now, you spread it over 4 years, saves about $43 million. We all good on that?
It's technically like that. It's not, but yeah, it's a way to do it. We do it with PERS. If you do it with TERS, this year you'll save 43. You don't have to put 43 million in, but next year you might have to put 43 more in. It just goes back and forth from year to year.
But it would get you that.
This year it would.
Okay. Continuation of former Governor Tomlin's mid-year budget cuts. That would save about $25 million.
Well, that's true. If you rolled back certain items in the budget that he cut to a mid-year cut, and we've identified the ones you could do, it's about $25 million. You're right.
Okay. State funding for dog racing and the racetrack modernization fund, I say you could save about $24 million there.
You could. We're actually going to do the dog racing bill first. The modernization is a little different animal. May or may not happen, but at least $15 million.
Okay, the dog subsidy, which they don't like the term subsidy, but that's $15 million. No teacher pay raise, that saves $21 million.
That's correct.
Okay. We still have unfilled state government vacancies. If you just eliminate those positions, you don't leave them vacant, but you eliminate it, save what, $10 million, $20 million?
Actually, it's my opinion that the vacancy sweep doesn't accomplish what you think, that most of those vacancy sweeps that were the cream of the crop were done a year ago, and it may not be that much money because these agencies fund activities with the vacancy numbers, and it sounds a little bizarre, but there may not be as much there, but whatever's there, we could do, and I'm not sure what that number would be.
Okay. I said get rid of the courtesy patrol, $5 million. That might be a little bit high, and you pointed out that's actually highway money. That's not general revenue.
You could take the money back from highways. We made them absorb that cost, and they actually, I think, are running it for less than $3 million. So it's, that
couple million bucks.
Yeah.
Okay. Elimination of the Office of Education and the Arts, and as we speak, they're having a budget hearing before Senate Finance right now about education and the arts. Now, they're talking about the bill shifts all the responsibilities to other places, but if you eliminate the office itself and the bureaucracy, I said you save about $4 million.
Yeah, I'm unsure that the number is that high. I mean, Gail has I actually was chairing that meeting, and I'll go back to it once we're done here. She's actually cut several employees over there already, so she's making an effort, and I'm not exactly sure what that savings would be, but it's going to be a couple million to $4. It'd be somewhere in $2 or $3 million.
Okay. Eliminate funding for fairs and festivals. There's about $3 million there.
Well, actually, the governor's already done that.
Okay.
He eliminated he's already cut about $26 million, which took away those sections of the budget that did the theaters and the fairs and festivals. They're already gone. That's not a cut we're doing. That's a part of his budget. Now, the one that we probably will have to add back in some form or fashion, and we were talking about this just before I came down, is how we transition public broadcasting out of, and I believe, one of the universities or somebody may be talking about taking them over. So some transition funding may be needed where we may have to add back a little bit. We'll see. But they're not in the budget either. So that's the one that probably may see some. We'll see.
Senate Finance
not
Committee,
a great deal of money.
I understand. Yeah, a couple million, $3 or $4 million.
Yeah.
Senate Finance Committee Chairman Mike Hall's with us. So I came up with $240 million in cuts, and that's before you go to the big three: public education, higher education and DHHR, which make up more than 70% of the budget. So you take it from there.
All right. Actually, there's a thing called redirecting, which I just make this simple. The workers' compensation fund that was being funded to that fund no longer needs that money, and that's about $31 million that we can count toward the deficit.
Okay.
Every year, Governor Tomlin proposed a bill that didn't make it, but it could make it this year. It's $11 million redirecting to the General Revenue Fund, money that was going to highways out of General Revenue collections, taxes that were collected for things that are related to highways. So we keep that $11 million. Now, briefly, I would say we're not abandoning highway funding. That's another subject.
Yeah,
Talk about that. And then you're right. Then you're down to the three big ticket items that are public education, the school aid formula. Currently, there is conversation and legislation is being pursued to provide some flexibility. You have 10 steps, and to say this very simply, sometimes money is locked up that if administrators had availability, they could do things with it that would mean that you could operate that formula with less money. Now, one thing that wouldn't happen, no teacher's salary would go down. They're in the law. They get an incremental pay increase every year. So there's some percentage of the school aid formula that may be able to be adjusted downward if that were done.
Okay, so let's just expand on that a little bit. And that's a little bit like this WVU bill that's going through, and that is, okay, you say to public education in this complicated school aid formula, you say to county school systems, we're going to give you the flexibility you've been clamoring for to operate your school system more of the way you want to do it, and hopefully more efficiently. And in return, we're going to take some money from you. So exactly. It's a give a little, give a little. And how much could you get there? Because every 1% of the school aid formula that you would take away is about $11 million. So how deeply do you think you might go there?
I'm uncertain, but I know that until the past week, that was off the table. But, now since it's come up as a possibility, I'm uncertain to tell you. But I will tell you this, that I think the public knows that many people out there whose budgets have been slashed due to job losses or whatever have had to go through hardship, and I think they feel that the state of West Virginia needs to do the same before we ask them for more revenue. So this is what this process is to try to get to the fact that, yeah, maybe we're not going to be as comfortable at state government as we've been in the past, but the numbers we got to push down and see exactly where this bottom is. And I'm uncertain that we're there yet. So doing these flexibility things for higher ed and public ed and then coming up with the number, and even in the Medicaid line, I mean, there's a lot of money in that Medicaid line, and you can cut that Medicaid line and look at it one of two ways. It's going to be a permanent cut, or you restore it toward the end of next year as a way to get a balanced budget.
How close, Mike, are you and the House Republicans on these specific cuts? Are you close to a point where the leaders of both chambers can come out to their members and say, here's what we want to cut? Are you getting your whiteboard ready?
Yes, my whiteboard is ready, and I'd actually say that the numbers you read there actually came from my office.
Well, I can't reveal my source, Mike, as you know.
I'm not asking you to reveal your source, but I'm saying these are numbers that may be separate from one another that I looked at immediately on day one when I was asked, when the budget was presented, how could you get down? And I said, here's how you could do it, and brought it to my initial caucus of Senate Finance 3 weeks ago. And I want to tell the public, I know there's a clock out there. I walked in today. It says we got 37 days.
What do you think of that clock?
Well, let me say this about that. If we had the bills passed that affected the school aid formula, that affected the dogs, we have to have a few bills passed in order to incorporate these things in the budget. But let's say those bills were passed yesterday. I could have that budget out the door, produced, and on the floor in 2 or 3 days.
Really?
Yes, the technical capabilities there, and 98. Now, what that would do, it would create a problem in the sense that if anybody passed another bill, like say, for example, the tax reform bill that Senator Carnes is working on comes out, and it has a positive revenue number, we'd have to change the budget document that we'd already passed. But I would say to the public who thinks we're not working, I'm going to tell you, and I would say this to the administration or anybody, we could produce a budget document if the numbers are settled and the legislation's all passed very quickly. So there's no sitting around here on our thumbs. We're working on ways to get down to spending only the revenue that we have, and that's my goal. And you've read the list, and your editorial was pretty accurate. That's what we're doing. And maybe this is acceptable or not acceptable to the administration. I think it's acceptable to many voters out there and much of the public who said, we expect that you guys would trim back, and before you come to us for money, we're not absolutely convinced the state government is not wasting and spending where it shouldn't be.
Well, yeah,
that's exactly what we're trying to do.
So you come back, and that's what that again. Maybe I insert myself too much in this process.
That's all right.
But and I understand how you have to have the bills move through if you're going to do certain things like the dog funds and things like that. But you could lay out. Here is the framework of our plan.
I intend to do that. I'm going to get my whiteboard out and intend to do that. Once we've settled. There are a couple sections of this actually in these three big areas that you're talking about that that I'm actually collaborating with our caucus and our president, not just me sitting up there in isolation. I want to do this as a group, that we're going to say, all right, are we going to own these numbers, because these are going to be controversial
numbers. And you got to have
numbers.
people on the same page.
I have to have them on the same page, and they're not all there yet because we don't have the numbers all there yet. But once they are, we're rolling that whiteboard out, and we will have the budget plan of the state senate.
And that will be when?
Hopefully before day 30,
which is next Thursday.
Yes, so I didn't realize it was that soon, but yeah, that would be acceptable.
Yeah,
I mean, somewhere between. Yeah. I mean, somewhere reasonably around there. Yeah, I actually am going to have a town meeting down in Putnam County Tuesday night with the Putnam County Republican Club, and I said just turn that into a town meeting and a public event. I may roll that whiteboard out down there Tuesday night.
No, then we got to go down there Tuesday night. It's easier for us if you do it here. But
I know it is, but that's my constituents.
I understand.
So I'll let you know.
Go. All right. And finally, Mike, is that even with all these, if you use the governor's budget, which has a $500 million shortfall, still doesn't get you to $500 million.
Well,
unless you cut deeply into the big three.
$450 million.
Okay,
difference.
450. Yeah. But will your
it's a little better.
Finally, do you anticipate, and you haven't gone through caucuses, do you anticipate with all these cuts there would still be, but folks, we still got to raise some revenue, and here's where we're going to do it.
Well, if you're $100 million short, just $100 million short, two things are going to happen. This is what I'm hearing in our caucus. If you're $100 million short, at that point you may look for some of the cash. You may look at the revenue shortfall reserve fund to fill the gap. But on our side, several members of the, we have a tax reform committee working, waiting for a revenue estimate on a very complex change that may be difficult to do. I recognize that.
Very difficult.
Very difficult because it's got a lot of moving parts to it.
Yes.
But the anticipation is that maybe it has a little more revenue in it than the current tax code does. That's the hope of the chairman of that committee. And at that point, that may be the way you fill that gap. But that to me is I wouldn't say remote, but I'd say it's a possibility, but I'm not counting on it right now. I'm looking at a budget that gets close to the revenue where it is. Now, remember, the rules of this game are the governor can change that revenue estimate.
Right.
And it happened last year. So we have to anticipate. He could raise it, he could lower it, he could do anything to us. But right now I'm working off the one we got.
Mike, real quick, and I know you got to go, but these cuts that we're talking about, because they're beginning to take shape, have you run those by the governor's office and Nick Casey and said, hey, here's what we're looking at, and the governor, does he have an open door on some of these things?
They saw my original list 3 weeks ago. No. Quite frankly, I've not had a meeting with the administration for a few days, but actually we're going to have to do that. We're just going to go down and say, and I didn't anticipate, based on his public comments, that he's not going to support this particular budget. So, but I don't know. So, it's a start. In all negotiations, you start somewhere, and we're saying, can we start? We'll start here. If the House is obviously taking a little different approach on the Save Our State line, and I told the chairman over there, work with Commerce Secretary Thrasher on it as he makes his case for why he could use some additional one-time money.
Sure.
And, things like that will be negotiated, all right? So that's where we're going to go.
Senator Mike Hall, chairman of Senate Finance, and he stepped out of committee to come down here. Mike, I appreciate it, okay?
All right.
All right, we'll be in touch.